Welcome to the Florida Divorce Podcast, your source for the information you need to successfully get through your divorce and into the next exciting chapter of life. Now, here's your host, Attorney Scott Kalish.
Hey everyone, my name is Scott Kalish. I am a divorce and family law attorney here in South Florida. Today I want to talk to you guys about child support, and I want to go through some specific examples, right? And I want to give you guys a feel for how much child support could be owed at the end of your divorce case, right? So I am going to, in another episode, which I'll link in the description, I talked about sort of how child support is calculated. But in this episode, I want to go through and give you some real world examples so you can kind of see how much child support can be, right? So you can get a feel for more or less where you might fall in terms of either owing or receiving child support. So again, I'll put a site to the other episode in the show notes, but really briefly, let me kind of give you guys a little bit of an overview of how child support is calculated, right? So in Florida, we have a statute. It's called, the Florida Child Support Guidelines Statute that includes the formula. And it basically tells us attorneys and judges how to calculate child support, right? So there's one formula for everybody. And that's essentially how we calculate child support. Takes into consideration each party's income and the amount of overnights each parent is going to have with the child or children. So with that, let me give you an example. So for purposes of my example, the husband's name will be John, the wife's name will be Mary, and let's go through. So to start out, we're going to have one child, and that child's name is going to be James, right? So James, there's going to be, let's start off with 50-50 time sharing, right? So there's going to be 182.5 days for John overnight with James and 182.5 nights with Mary overnight, right? Let's say that both parties are going to alternate claiming the tax exemption, right? For James once they get divorced. So they're going to alternate each year, right? We'll say Mary has every even year and John has every odd year, right? So that's going to alternate. They have 50-50 time sharing. And let's say that they make approximately the same amount of money per month. Let's say they each earn gross wages $5,000 a month, $5,000 a month. So child support is essentially in that scenario is going to be $0, right? It's going to be a very, very nominal amount. If you know anything about child support in Florida, you probably knew that as soon as I said, 50-50 time sharing and the parties make a similar amount, you kind of knew where I was going. So in that scenario, when you have two people making the same amount of money, exercising 50-50 time sharing, child support is going to be $0. Now, that's not considering any daycare, aftercare, babysitting, for work purposes. And then also no insurance being paid by either parent. I just want to give you guys, just an easy example for the first example, right? But let's change it around here. Let's say that John only has 100 overnights. John has 100 overnights with the child, which is approximately 27%. So we'll say, let's give him 110 overnights to make it about 30%. So it's 70-30. And let's keep it to where both parties make the same amount of money, $5,000 per month gross. Child support is going to be $413 paid by John. Again, there's no consideration for purposes of my example for any daycare, aftercare, or any insurance paid by either parent. We're just going to take numbers for purposes of this podcast episode. I just want to take numbers just by using the amount of overnights and in the party's income, so you guys get a feel for how it can change. So let's go with the same example. And let's have it to where, John is still going to have 110 overnights, but John, instead of $5,000 a month, John's going to be making $7,000 a month. So previous example, John was making $5,000. He has 30% overnights with James, and child support was $413 a month. But we're upping John's income to $7,000 a month, keeping Mary at $5,000 a month. And let's see what child support does. Child support jumps to $597 a month. But let's say Mary, unfortunately, she can only make minimum wage. Let's say $10 an hour times 40 times 52 divided by 12, $1,733. So let's basically use Mary only making minimum wage right now. We're keeping John at $7,000 a month. Same time sharing, 110 overnights, which is approximately 30%. That comes out to $853 per month paid by John. Okay? But let's reverse this. Let's say that John is going to stay at 110 overnights. Mary's going to have 70%, but Mary's the one making the money. Mary makes $7,000 a month. And let's say John makes minimum wage a month. Let's just say $1733. So in that scenario, even though Mary has the majority time sharing, 70%, my guidelines are still showing Mary being paid, or Mary having to pay $121 to John every single month. Okay. Let's change something a little bit. Let's say that John makes $5,000 a month. Let's see what that does. Let's bring him back up. All right. Now it swings the other way. Now, again, John only having 30% of the overnights, still going to be, so now it's going to be John paying Mary $290 per month, John making $5,000, Mary making $7,000. All right. Let's actually, what would be good? Okay. Let's show an extreme example, right? Let's say John is, an alcoholic or whatever, or abuser, and the court says John cannot have any overnights with the child. So he has 0 overnights. He only has limited daytime time sharing. And they're still going to, well, you know what? No, we're going to give Mary the tax credit every year. We're going to keep John at $5,000 a month. We'll put Mary at $5,000 a month. That's going to be $647 a month paid by John to Mary, equal income, and Mary having all overnight time sharing. Okay, very, very extreme example, but just wanted to give you guys a sense for what that number might look like. Tax dependent also of Mary. So Mary's claiming, the money, or claiming the taxes every single year. Let's do an example. I know I said this earlier, I wasn't going to do it, but let me just give you guys a sense over how this actually works with like childcare, like expenses and stuff. So let's equalize their income at $5,000 per month. Let's give them equal time sharing, 182.5 to each parent. All right. Remember, guys, this is only one child. This is only James. We're only talking about James here. All right. So let's alternate taxes, but let's add in childcare. So $5,000 a month for each parent in income. But let's say Mary has to pay, or Mary pays for the aftercare for James, right? Let's say she works late and she has to pay for aftercare. So let's say aftercare is about $300 a month that Mary's paying. So I know before with this example, without the aftercare, it was $0 child support. Here, when I add in the $300 in Mary's column that she has to pay every single month for childcare, for aftercare for James, John is going to have to contribute $166 per month. Okay. So let's fool around with this a little bit. Let's say, we're going to do 50-50 overnights with the child, but we're going to say that let's say John makes $10,000 a month. Let's say he makes double what Mary makes. And there's a $300 expense Mary pays for aftercare. That number then turns into $542. John has to pay $542 because he makes double what Mary makes. Okay. Now let's say let's keep John at the $10,000 mark. Mary's at $5,000. Let's say Mary has 70% overnights with the child. So what did we say before? We gave John like 110 for like 30%. All right. We have, John making 10,000, John also only getting 30% of the overnights, and Mary having that $5,000 income and the $300 child care expenses a month. Child support is going to be paid by John $1,000 a month. So that's basically what that number is. Okay. And that's alternating taxes, by the way, too. All right. So you guys can kind of see the range and how it swings. I think that's the last example. Hey, you know what? If anybody has a question on this or would like me to run their child support guidelines, I'd be happy to, or have my office do it. Just send me an email at scott@kjlawfla.com, scott@kjlawfla.com. Just let me know that you've listened to the podcast and you want to know if I would run the child support guidelines for your specific scenario. I'm going to ask your income, your spouse's income, and the amount of overnights that you anticipate having, or you want to use for purposes of the calculation, and I'd be happy to do it. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful, please give it a 5-star review on the app or wherever you listen to it at. I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, guys? Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Divorce Podcast. To learn the 10 secrets behind every successful divorce, visit FloridaDivorcePodcast.com. If you'd like Scott's help in your divorce case, go to KJLawFLA.com.